All right, let's get right into it. What if I told you there's this hidden ingredient, kind of like a form of liquid gold, that's the secret behind why some of your favorite foods have that perfect texture and can last so long on the shelf? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this amazing culinary powerhouse. You've definitely tasted it, probably 1,000 times. It's what gives ice cream that creamy richness, it's behind the flaky layers in a croissant, and it's responsible for that amazing melt-in-your-mouth feeling you get from a great chocolate bar. But here's the crazy part. In its raw form, this ingredient is super fragile. It's a total diva that can be ruined by the smallest thing. So, okay, if this stuff is so precious, you've got to protect it, right? But what are you even protecting it from? Well, the list of its enemies is surprisingly long and honestly, a little weird. I mean, just think about that for a second. It sounds like the start of a weird joke, doesn't it? What do copper pipes, sunlight, and a drop of water have in common? Seriously, what on earth could possibly link those things together? Well, the answer is they can all completely destroy our liquid gold. Yep, every single one of them is a saboteur. Even the tiniest trace of copper or iron can set off a chemical reaction that makes fat taste all metallic and rancid. Water, even a super tiny amount, becomes a breeding ground for microbes. Then you've got these enzymes called lipase, and they create these awful, soapy off flavors. And of course, you have the usual suspects: oxygen, heat, and sunlight, which all just love to break down fat and ruin its quality. And the results are, well, a disaster for food companies, and for us. We're talking about food that tastes rancid and metallic, an unappetizing brownish color, and a texture that's gritty and coarse instead of silky smooth. So the big challenge for food science was crystal clear. How do you keep all the good stuff from this ingredient while getting rid of all its enemies? And that brings us to the big reveal. The solution, the hero of this whole story, is a product of just incredible purity and stability. So what is this liquid gold? It's called anhydrous milk fat, or AMF for short. Now, the key word here is anhydrous. It literally just means without water. It's made by taking regular cream or butter and running it through this intense purification process that strips out basically everything that isn't pure milk fat. Now, this is where it gets really wild. Just look at the difference here. Regular butter, it's about 16% water. AMF, it's less than 0.1% water. I mean, that's practically nothing. And jumping from 80% fat to over 99.8%, well, that is a complete game changer. You go from something you have to keep in the fridge and use in a few weeks to something that's totally fine at room temperature for over a year. That's incredible. Let that number just sink in for a minute. 99.8% pure milk fat. It's an ingredient that has been engineered down to its absolute essence. And that right there is why it's such a technological marvel in the food world. So how in the world do they do it? How does science take something as delicate as cream and turn it into something so pure and so stable? Well, it's this really fascinating multi-step process that's designed specifically to wipe out all those enemies we just talked about. You know, the whole point of this entire process really comes down to two main goals. One, get rid of the water, and two, shut down those spoilage-causing enzymes. If you can pull that off, you've got a product that can last, and there are two main ways they make it happen. Okay, so the first method starts with cream. First, they pasteurize it at a really high temperature, which kills off those nasty lipase enzymes. Then, they use a series of centrifuges to spin the cream like crazy, separating the heavier water and solids from the lighter fat. They keep concentrating it more and more until for the final step, they put it under a vacuum to literally boil away the very last traces of water. The other method, which is actually more common, starts with butter. They gently melt it down, which lets the fat, water, and milk solids all separate into layers. A centrifuge then whisks away the water and solids, and then it goes through that same final vacuum drying step to get it super pure. And then there's this last brilliant touch, a very carefully controlled cooling process to make sure the texture is perfectly smooth. And once again, it all boils down to this one number: less than or equal to 0.1% moisture. That is the magic number. It's the threshold that stops microbes from growing and gives AMF its amazing stability. But hey, the job's not done yet. You've just created this perfectly pure ingredient. Now you have to keep it that way. And these final steps, they're all about packaging and preservation. Before it even gets close to a package, the AMF gets tested against these incredibly strict standards. They measure things like free fatty acids, or FFA, which tells them how fresh it is, and peroxide value to make sure no oxidation is started. The standards have to be super exacting because the quality has to be absolutely perfect. This is how they build the final fortress around it. To get rid of oxygen, they fill the containers right up to the very top. Then they often flush them with nitrogen gas to push out any air that's left. Finally, the AMF is sealed up in these heavy-duty containers, like steel drums or tins, that protect it from its last two enemies, light and moisture. So, after all that science, all that purification and protection, where does this liquid gold actually go? The answer is pretty much everywhere. AMF is a real cornerstone for the global food industry. Yeah, it's in our favorite treats, ice cream, chocolate, pastries, but it's also incredibly important for global nutrition. See, because it doesn't need a refrigerator, AMF can be shipped anywhere on the planet to make recombined milk in places that don't have fresh dairy. It's a vital, shelf-stable source of fat for things like infant formula, making sure essential nutrition can get to even the most remote places. You know, this quote from the source material really just says it all. AMF isn't just another ingredient, it's a technological solution. It solves those age-old problems of storing and transporting dairy, which allows for consistent, high-quality food to be made on a truly global scale. So here's something to think about. The next time you bite into a piece of chocolate or have a scoop of ice cream, just remember the science that went into it. That same liquid gold, that same incredible journey of purification, isn't just making your dessert perfect. It's also helping deliver vital dairy nutrition to people all over the world.